So we start off again. I'll open by saying thanks again for being here with us. This is the second of the two sessions carded. The first session was held on Wednesday, the 9th of December, and we had approximately, I think it would have been more than 100 participants joining us at that particular session. So to start the session, just to recap a bit of what we would have done in that first session and move on to what is being carded for today's session. As you would have heard, the Caribbean Pest Diagnostic Network, in collaboration with the USDA APHIS, promotes the building of regional competency and capacity to rapidly and accurately diagnose and manage plant health issues. This is to prevent the introduction and or spread of quarantine pests that could threaten crops, forestry, and biodiversity, and ensure the safe and sustainable trade of agricultural products. You would have heard from the previous session. In June 2020, the Cpdn, along with the Plant Health Director, CPHD, established a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, with the University of Florida. The agreement will allow the 32 member states free access to rapid digital diagnostic via the Cpdn. The Cpdn and the Caribbean Plant Health Directors have also recently relaunched its website, and this will now facilitate the digital upload of pest identification samples. Diagnosis will be made online through interactions between extension officers, plant protection experts, and other in-country persons. Their concerns will be quickly assessed, their submissions will be quickly assessed, and the results communicated. As chairperson of the Cpdn, together with members, and in my own capacity as Deputy Director, Research Crops Research Division of the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries in Trinidad and Tobago, together with representatives from the CPHD Secretariat, USDA APHIS, and University of Florida, these training activities have been scheduled on the use of the Cpdn's new website or revamped website. These virtual sessions will highlight the website's usage, the resources, troubleshooting activities, and sampling submission. So as mentioned, the first session was held on Wednesday, 9th of December, and today's session, the final session, and I'm sure these sessions coming out from the technical working group, the Cpdn, will continue into the new year 2021. So with regards to today's session, I would have walked you through what we are having, and just quickly to recap what topics were covered in the first session. We had opening remarks by the CPHD chairman, Mr. Brian Critchlow, introduction to the Cpdn, user registration, navigating the website as a registered user, both by Dr. Amanda Hodges. And then we had an interesting session, digital photography for diagnostics, by Mr. Lyle Buss, University of Florida. We also went through specialists and diagnosticians directory from the University of Florida, the CPHD mobilization plan as roles and responsibilities, and the MOU as presented by the CPHD chairman. And then a case study was presented on Trinidad and Tobago implementation and use of the Cpdn. And the session ended with expectations and what is expected for session 2, which is today's session. So having said all of that, and actually brought us up to speed for those who are present again, for those who have just joined us, thank you for being with us today as we walk through the program. And based on the agenda for today's session, as you would see clearly, the key objective is to demonstrate the live use and troubleshooting for the Cpdn site. And a lot of what is going to be done today is what would have started in the first session, and what countries, focal points, and users would have been encouraged to actually activities to engage and to therefore report and provide feedback as we move forward with the Cpdn. So having said all of that, and at the session, focal points, we encourage focal points to be identified for the countries, users to be identified, forms, application forms, registration forms to be submitted to the CPHD Secretariat, and then these were then forwarded to Dr. Hodges from University of Florida. This therefore would have enabled person to be registered as what is termed country registration, and therefore ending with a user ID and a password being assigned to the person. So following the registration of the forms, users would have been asked to go on the CPDN website and sign up to ensure that the University of Florida and Dr. Hodges would have done their part in terms of actually registering you as a user. So having done that, we would like to determine from the first session till now, what is the status of that country registration and how the remaining sessions therefore will lead forward. So I will now like to invite Ms. Renita Susaran to actually give us an update on the status of country registration. And Ms. Susaran, most of us in this room probably would have met her or would have seen her name. She's the agricultural scientist, USDA IFIS, which is the International Services with the Trinidad and Tobago office. She has been a powerhouse and working behind the scenes actually to have these activities implemented with a high degree of efficiency. And Ms. Susaran, Renita, as you are fondly called, thank you for the dedication and taking the region to a different level. So I now invite you to present on the status of the country registration to the CPDN. Thank you.
Thank you, Deanne. Thank you for that really, really good introduction. Thank you again, Deanne, for that introduction. And I'm pretty sure that many of you joining the call today and that would have joined the activities last week are pretty familiar with the activities of the USDA APHIS International Services Office in Trinidad, mainly because the office functions as well as the secretariat for the CPHD forum. That's why I'm presenting on the CPHD's slide. And becoming the secretariat for the CPHD forum was pretty much natural for the Trinidad office because of APHIS's leadership in the genesis and the formation of the CPHD forum way back under the stewardship of Mr. Lionel Dishe back in 2007. And obviously our continued financial and technical support through the GCSI, the Greater Caribbean Safeguarding Initiative, and international services. And as Deanne would have mentioned, the CPDN is just one example of a number of regional safeguarding activities that the APHIS office is engaged in with our regional partners and the CPHD forum to achieve. So my presentation will not be very long. We're playing tag team on this, as Deanne mentioned, because there is a process flow that we have initiated, which is for the CPHD Secretariat to collect um, various registration forms for focal points and users of the member states, collate that information and pass it on to the University of Florida to do their approval processes to give you all your username and passwords. So I will be doing the first half of the presentation to just share information in terms of numbers and statistics of all of those countries that we would have received feedback or those completed registration forms from. And Dr. Hodges will do the second half with letting you all know how that process went on her end. So, not to be repetitive, but I really just wanted to include this slide here just to put things into context and to share some background. Because, as Deanne mentioned in the introduction, there's a lot of things that happen in the background that you all are not really aware of. And surely the history of CPDN is much predates the information that I have on this slide all the way back to the early 2000s in 2005, 2006 under projects known as CISWIG and CISIP. People who are on my age perhaps would not even know of CISWIG and CISIP, but they were the group that first started dealing with invasive alien species detection, and the need to have a resource such as the CPDN came out of some discussions under those projects. And way later down, USDA APHIS got involved by providing equipment and training opportunities to have at least 6 countries in the Caribbean region using Cpdn. But to fast forward to more recent times, because of that continued need to have a coordinated region-wide network to support the NPPOs with respect to quickly identifying pest threats, we really re-engaged the CPDN technical working group to come back together and meet in November of 2018 as a technical working group to discuss how we were going to resolve this need for the region. And we hosted the meeting in 2018, as mentioned, in Trinidad, and the members, we had a very large meeting. Members of the TWG came with their ideas and their thoughts. And of course, the representative from the University of Florida, Dr. Amanda Hodges, attended, and she attended with the purview that she was going to get this thing resolved for us. And so she came really ready and willing to make this thing happen. So at the end of the fourth meeting of the Caribbean Pest Diagnostics Network, we had a large wish list of activities that we wanted to see happen. And Deanne would have mentioned most of this, both Deanne and Brian. We had the hope to remove the $2,000 annual fee attached to the service, to expand the access of the CPDN, obviously beyond the 6 initial countries, to revamp and do more work on the website and the administration of the website, and obviously to establish an MOU to guide this entire process, make it above board, the development of e-learning modules, and that commitment to have 24-hour turnabouts with respect to IDs. So for 2 years, from 2019 to 2020, a lot of work happened in the background. We're talking about 2 years of committed dedication to meetings, follow-ups, dialogues, negotiations between University of Florida, the CPHD chairman, the CPDN chairman, and the secretariat. And we made significant achievements in those 2 years. We got to where we are now. Basically, we have the site revamped. We conducted our beta testing to ensure that the site was of quality and it could handle the load that we expect. We got the MOU completed, and if you know anything about MOUs, they take time, so it was great to have that done. We also developed in the background our mobilization plan. It was a 4-point mobilization plan that we put together for the region to roll this thing out. And actually now, most recently, we are rolling out the part that is going to involve our planter directors. So in November of this year, you all would have received letters from the CPHD Secretariat. We extended invitations to 27 countries to join the CPDN. We would have spent a lot of time detailing all of the roles, responsibilities, and actions that were needed for the focal point and the users, and exactly why we needed them to be who they were. And we are now at the point of the regional launch and training. And I share all of this to say that it took a lot of those elements that you would see in the picture on the side there to get us to this point. It took a lot of diplomatic negotiations. It took a lot of hours with the beta testing, dedication, and perseverance, particularly from Dr. Hodges and Deanne. So after all of that, with respect to responses, so to date, as of yesterday afternoon around 4 p.m., the Secretariat would have collected or received completed registration forms for focal points and users from 13 countries out of the 27 countries that we would have written to. So that is just under about 50% of the group that would have responded to the request. All the information received, as Deanne would have just mentioned, is being collated by the Secretariat in a more simpler form via Excel spreadsheet. That is then sent to the University of Florida, Dr. Hodges, for the back-end approval process. So when you go onto the site and you register, as we've been asking you to do after the last session, Dr. Hodges just verifies your name against the list that we would have been sending from our end to do the approvals. So you see the importance, please, of all of those countries who are present here on this meeting, whose name is not on this list that we have, the table that we have, that you kindly please complete your focal point and user registration forms and return to the CPHT Secretariat, please, because we need to, as Deanne and Brian would have probably been saying repeatedly over the time, we need as a region to really demonstrate the usage of this resource. It took a lot of time and effort to get to this point, and to be sustainable and to sustain this resource that we have here, we need to show our ability to use it. So as mentioned again, you could just see quickly what I decided to add to this table was just to give persons an idea of the type of users that we have. We have from the various countries that I could have gotten the information from. We have persons ranging from the entomology, pathology labs, surveillance, and obviously PPQ. So the takeaway from this is to please, if you do not see your name, your country listed in this table, that means the Secretariat have not received your registration forms, and we would like it to be completed and sent to us as soon as possible. So I just wanted to take a quick second. I did promise that my presentation was going to be short, but I just wanted to really extend appreciation from USDA APHIS International Services. Usually we see, um, you know, appreciation from the end of CPHD, but as a partner agency, I would really like to extend our appreciation to Dr. Amanda Hodges and of course Deanne Ramroop for for their leadership, for both of their leadership and perseverance on this project. And of course the members of the technical working group for really supporting Deanne and Dr. Hodges even during the beta testing. Because of the COVID situation that has staff sort of stymied at HQ in Washington, and the time of the year, Deanne and Dr. Hodges, I do apologize. I was not able to have official IS certificates and tokens of appreciation and recognition to give to you today, but that will be sent to you in 2021. So with that, I hand it over back to Deanne.
Thank you very much, Renita, for that very comprehensive session. It's great that you took some time to take us back, to take the group back to some of the earlier work that was done with the CPDN and to highlight where we are now. And I think the ball is in the court for the countries actually to complete the forms that were sent, be it the focal point registration form or the user forms, send it to the CPHD Secretariat, and then which will be forwarded to the University of Florida, to Dr. Amanda Hodges. And parallel to that, to also go on the Cpdn website and sign up. I'm using the word sign up because when you go on the site, that's basically what you would see. Before I move on to the next session, I'd also like to highlight, and if you look on the chat session, you'll be seeing the name Ms. Salian Henry, APHIS IS Trinidad. So I also want to make mention of the support from Ms. Salian Henry, who works in the office with Renita as the office management assistant. And she definitely has been working behind the scenes. Ms. Henry is responsible for all the reminders that we are receiving, that all of you are receiving with regards to getting on track, being registered, logging on, reminders on what time. If there's a clarification behind the scenes that's required, you would see another email. And for that, we wanted to really thank the USDA APHIS IS office for providing that level of support and feedback. You know, just to say, when you are actually trying to coordinate an activity as this one in country, if you're dealing in country, it has on its own a lot of challenges and difficulties. And here we are trying to coordinate throughout the region. So I must say thanks again for the USDA APHIS IS office, to Ms. Susaran and to Salian for sending out those reminders, those much needed reminders to all of us. So if we proceed now on the agenda, feedback from the University of Florida with regards to the registration and samples that were being submitted. I will invite Dr. Amanda Hodges just to speak a bit more about Dr. Hodges. Dr. Amanda Hodges has authored and co-authored more than 100 publications related to arthropod diagnostics and invasive species. I'm sure there's a lot more she would have done to date. Dr. Hodges is known for delivering innovative, hands-on plant pest diagnostic workshops and has also provided initial key leadership for the launch of the National Plant Diagnostic Network (NPDN) online first detector training program and several other similar programs globally. Indeed, we are fortunate to have Dr. Amanda Hodges from the University of Florida as a collaborator with the CPHD Cpdn and for providing the level of support for the benefit of the region. So Dr. Hodges, thank you again, and I now invite you to share with us your feedback with regards to the registration forms and sample submission. Dr. Hodges.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really want to highlight the efforts of the USDA APHIS IS office, Renita Swarson and Sally Ann Henry. It's been really tremendous, the effort that the USDA has provided in order to actually provide the focal point of contact. We're very grateful at the University of Florida for the collaboration with the USDA APHIS International Services and the excellent work provided by the USDA and also by the Cpdn with the Deanne Ramrup. This has been really tremendous in terms of the beta testing. I also want to thank all of the countries for submitting your forms to the USDA office because this has been a very important part of streamlining the process to make sure that the correct people receive approvals. Many of you probably received your approval even today as we were speaking, and as the additional forms arrive and information arrives for new individuals that need to be approved, I will approve those as well. I think the process of approval has been fairly seamless, so hopefully many of you have seen that you have actually been approved as a user of the site, and I've noticed that some of the countries have started to submit samples, and that seems to be going fairly well so far. Of course, Deanne will provide us more information in detail in that regard. But really, I think it has been seamless, and I do appreciate the efforts to streamline the focal point and the contacts just to be sure that I'm admitting the correct persons on behalf of the countries to the site. I guess at this time, Deanne, I'd like to hand the floor back to you so that we can entertain potential questions related to the site and any concerns that any persons have here related to their approval process.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. So basically, I was saying we'd want to have some feedback from the participants, from the countries who have submitted, if there were any challenges, if they received their user name and password, if they're able to log on. And we would also like to hear from those countries who have not yet submitted. Are there any challenges in the submission of the forms? Are you having difficulty in selecting your users? And those are some of the feedback we'd like to have from the countries. So as indicated in the chat, if you would like to speak, we'll do it in order. So if you could just kindly raise your hand on the participants listing to the bottom right, you would see raise hand, and then we can have some feedback. So I'm seeing Ms. Janelle Gore Francis from Antigua. Janelle.
Hi, good morning, everybody. We just recently submitted our information for 2 users and identified our focal point. And just a few minutes ago, we got confirmation of our password and so on. So we have not really actually had the chance to access the system and submit, attempt to submit samples. However, in terms of, we have identified some persons from extension research and our agricultural stations to be what we think we would designate as indirect users. So the question I have for Deanne, based on your setup, is I noticed that your setup is like that, where you have your users are in plant protection, and then you have the indirect users. So what I wanted was, what sort of mechanism do you have in place for managing that submission from those indirect users to you, to your users, to then for onward submission to Cpdn? So we'd like to kind of piggyback on your system. Thanks.
Excellent, Janelle, because I was about to ask you how you're setting it up, how you're working. So this is how because we are now rolling it off. So this is what we have done and I intend to do. So what from the research division, which is the entomology and pathology labs, we have enabled email addresses. So so those users who are registered are the ones who would have been approved users and who can submit the samples. So with regards to the extension services, which are outside of this division, so the extensionists and any other who would fall into that category, what we propose to do is to do similar, for example, to go through some of the presentations with those indirect users, because at the end of the day, those persons will be in the field taking the photos and so. So you want, when you receive those samples, those digital photos, it is up to par, it is within the specs. So one is training with those, initially a training program. So we would have, just like how you have trainers, we would engage those persons who are the indirect users and have a training session or have like a smaller version to this session that we are having now. Once that is done, these persons are now equipped and they actually in a better position in terms of when they are sending digital photos from the field or from wherever, it is going to be more in keeping with the specs that is expected. They will then forward this to the person who is identified as a registered user in the particular laboratory, and then that is going to be sent onward to the University of Florida. So that's the mechanism we will have in place. In that way, we can manage. And it also means that we would do a session similarly. How do you select your indirect users? So of course, we would work with the region, the directors, the deputy directors there to select the persons who may be a lead person or a senior person who will coordinate the activities for, let's say, a number of districts or so. So that's how it's proposed.
All right, thank you very much.
I hope that helps. I hope that clarifies. Janelle.
Yes, it does. Yes, thanks.
Okay, thanks. All right, I see. So we move on. Saniel, your hand is raised.
Good morning, colleague. Good morning, Diane and the team, Renita and Sally. Thanks again. And of course, to Dr. Ajit. I have several questions, so I will perhaps go with two and then allow others to answer. Hopefully, perhaps some of the others will be answered. My first question, though, Diane, has to do with the synergies now between what were the country representatives for the Cpdn and now the focal point in this revamped, Cpdn network. So I noted for the Cpdn network, there was a strong emphasis on the focal point, which Jamaica appreciates, and that the focal point, the country, should consider the focal point to be the IPPC contact points. And I assume that is for example, if there's an identification of a new pest for the country, you would really want the IPPC contact points to be aware or ahead of MPPO. So I really wanted to know, how do you now envision the representatives for the country and the new focal point? Question two, Diana, like Janelle, I would have only gotten that email response today. From the Jamaica end, we had a preliminary meeting with the head of our PRA and the entomologists within the MPPO, but we're supported by our research and development division and extension. And one of the things we wanted to understand, is there a login or user profile for the category called the other users or the indirect users, as well as the focal point? Will their interface on the Cpdn look differently? Meaning, will they have any additional control or any additional thing on the CPDN?
Let me see if I can, if I can, we'll need to clarify with regards to the first one, Saniel. So the question is, if you have the focal point as the IPPC contact point, so it is suggested, yes, because at the end of the day, the IPPC contact point is the person in the country who will coordinate the plant health matters, more or less, in terms of communicating with IPPC. However, the focal point could be another person, not necessarily the IPPC contact point. So the IPPC contact point or the country could decide that there is another focal point. So there is another person who is termed the focal point. The key thing is that whether it is the IPPC contact point or the focal point, or the focal point is a new person other than the IPPC contact point, the key thing is that the person coordinates the activities of the CPDN. Because basically, when we're dealing with a country, it will be difficult to deal with multiple users. And even for the country, within the country, it's going to be easier for there's one person who is coordinating the activities. So you can have multiple users, but you have someone who coordinates that activity, more so because you're doing diagnostics. So you want to have a coordinated approach for your submission of samples that's originating in your country, and for the receipt of the preliminary identification from your particular country. So that must be coordinated, and hence that reason why it was suggested that it could be the IPPC contact point. Does that clarify your first question?
Yes, Dion. To an extent, yes.
Is there any further clarification, or in case I would have missed anything with that response?
I think what I'm trying to figure, Dion, is the current CPDN, technical working group.
Yes.
And the reps from the countries on that CPDN working group. How do you propose the interaction between the focal point if they're not one in the same?
How do I see? Okay. All right. So the members of the technical working group will interface. If it is not the same person, so for example, if you have John Doe from Jamaica who is on the technical working group and that person is not the focal point, they're just part of the person who is on the technical working group will continue to work on the activities and may also be a user, I would imagine. So I think it is the final decision resides with the country, if that person or not. If it is that person who's in the technical working group, it is not mandatory. It is based on, because, for example, you may have persons in a technical working group and their workload may not allow them to take on another portfolio. So again, it all depends on the country in terms of what decision you take in terms of who you are appointing. And a lot of the times it depends on the workload or the level that the person is operating. So I would say, again, that's an in-country decision, whether a member of the technical working group is the focal point. That's the choice of the country.
Okay.
Yes. The second point, the second question that you raised with regards to is there a special interface for indirect users and users? Now, when I did the presentation, I used the word indirect user just simply to say that this person is not communicating directly with the University of Florida. And the reason for that is that, again, it all came down to managing this submission of digital samples. Because for Trinidad, for any country, you would want to manage how your samples, the focal point in that country should have a mechanism to be aware of what sample is being submitted from your country for identification and the results that is going to be sent back, the preliminary information that's going to be sent back, because that information is very important because, of course, is with regards to insect pests and diseases. So the way how the CPDN network is set up, basically it is for a user. It will not differentiate indirect, because indirect in the context that I would have used it was just a term that was coined to say there is a mechanism by which this user can submit samples, but not directly, but via a registered users. Because for the registered users, it's always best that you have a number where you could control submission and results. Because when you start using the site, you would see where, and I would have mentioned it in the presentation, when a user is given their username and password and you submit a sample, that sample goes to the University of Florida under that person's ID. And therefore the results is sent directly to that person. So it means that you must have a mechanism by which it is not copied to the focal point. It is just sent to the user. So therefore you need to have a mechanism by which you can able to collate this information maybe on a weekly basis or on a regular basis. Because a preliminary identification, based on what it is, you need to have access to it in case it's something that needs to be flagged or highlighted immediately. So hence, this is how the network is set up, just to deal with the users, because the University of Florida will just deal with the sample submission. But this is what I said, within the country, you could set up your own mechanism. You may not need, depending on your size or the number of counties or areas you have, you may not need to set up indirect users. But for us in Trinidad, where we have all these counties, and to manage the samples and submissions, because our officers wouldn't be going out and would not be spot on for a number of the areas. For example, in our ports of entry, we will not have our users, our specialist officers at those ports of entry at all times. So therefore, we need to have a mechanism by which we can be able to use the network and send our samples, but not necessarily have these persons as direct users. All right, so I hope that clarifies the second point, did it? Or would you?
Yes, it did.
It did? Yeah, all right.
Deanne?
Thanks. Yes.
Sorry, can I just add to Sunil's question, her first question? Sunil, the reason why we were targeting these plantel director, or in most cases, the plantel director is also the IPPC point of contact, because we compared the lists. The reason that we selected or suggested that that type of person be the focal point is because we are aiming for a degree of coordination, for it not to be ad hoc. And we understand the type and the sensitivity of the information that is going back and forth. As well, we wanted to pinpoint someone, and it was key for us to pinpoint someone that has that authority as we continue to implement things under the CPDN work plan, that we could engage with the point of contact in the country, the focal point, that has that ability, the authority to implement those recommendations or activities, suggestions, changes, whatever it may be, that is going to happen with the CPDN as we go along with the activity. As well, with respect to most technical working groups, as you know, we have a work plan for the technical working group, and the members will obviously continue to contribute and add value and implement those activities that are decided under the working group. So isn't to say per se that the person from Jamaica that sits, the participant that sits on the technical working group for the CPDN can or cannot be the focal point, but this is the reasons I mentioned before is the reason why we selected or targeted the plantel director for becoming the focal point, as well as, remember, there is a point where we need to measure the use of this site. So we needed to ensure the right person was selected.
Thanks, Renita. A follow-up question to the second one, though. Would we be able, so Dion had said that there's no special, I guess we all have one user profile on our interface on the CPDN. Would we be able to generate monthly reports?
If I may, I will address that question. At this time, yes, everyone has the same interface. But if that's an interest of the countries, I could talk to Dr. Zinn about that to see if it would be possible for the focal point to have a different designation and be able to see the samples from that country. The system is not set up for that at this time, but I think that would be a fairly simple addition potentially to the site if that is of interest.
Now, I was also saying thanks, Dan, to Dr. Arges for her response. Certainly, I think it would be of some benefit if we were able to have an interface that allows the focal point to see submission or even just to be able to generate monthly, quarterly reports. That's certainly something that we have discussed in the meeting that we had on Monday in Jamaica regarding being able to have that sort of access and generating reports.
Okay.
Very good information. Thank you. Thanks, Deanne. Sorry.
Yes. Thanks, Danielle, for that suggestion. Just to add to it, when you submit the samples, you can either click and to say if it's going to be a private sample or a public sample. So if you put a private, it means that the only person who can view the sample, to view your submission, it is you, the user. And if it's public, of course, all users will be able to view the sample. But just to add to Saniel, when at this particular point in time, while Dr. Hodges mentioned that is something that could be looked into, when you go onto the site, you can actually see all the users and the countries that have submitted. So for example, in the case of Trinidad, you could go on, you can just, but of course it might be a bit tedious, especially we have a lot of submissions, but you could quickly identify by date, the sample that was submitted and the country, the name of the user, the country, and the date it was submitted. Okay. So thanks again, Saniel, very good discussions, and I'm sure all the participants would have benefited from that exchange. I see the hand raised for Mr. Kenrick Whitty from Baja, Belize. Mr. Whitty.
Yes, good morning, everybody. And thanks for having us join this very important meeting. I would just like to say that, well, Belize have not yet submitted the names of the focal point nor the users. This is merely because since the first session, I attended the meeting in that session along with another plant health officer, and we haven't really had a chance to meet with the plant health director, who is also the IPPC contact point, Mr. Francisco Gutierrez. So as soon as we do so, I'm expecting by the end of this week, we will be submitting those names. And I guess it's a good thing in a sense that we waited, because I'm getting some information regarding the preference of the IPPC contact point being the focal point, which would make the system run smoothly as it refers to submission of sample, the type of sample, and possible pests of quarantine importance being submitted and so on. So yeah, so again, by the end of this week, and yeah, hopefully I can get a hold of Francisco. He has been also acting as the managing director for the entire institution, and hence he has been very busy and elusive, I think. So yes, so thanks again, and hopefully by end of this week. Right.
Thank you very much, Kenrick. Very good to hear. And as you spoke there, I would also encourage participants here and countries beyond this particular meeting, because the presentations are going to be shared. You are encouraged actually to create or to do some awareness sessions about the Cpdn in your country with your users, just to refresh and maybe, as a team to work out things, because this is how you will need to do it. You will need to get your users together and brainstorm in terms of, how best you can really explore and make maximum use of this website. So you are encouraged, whether it is with your extension services or your information services, to promote the use of the network by encouraging persons and or sharing the information with them by doing some hands-on sessions. And if countries who have gotten they receive their log-on and their passwords and username from the University of Florida, you can also go through the site and actually, show exactly how it's going to be used for the benefit of the country. All right. So thanks again for that exchange. I now invite Ms. Hannah Romaine from St. Lucia. Hannah, please.
Good morning, Deanne. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Thank you, Deanne, for such great work that you've been doing with the Cpdn. Very incredible, very good work, Deanne. Of course, we are very grateful for all of your work, your effort that you've been pushing into the Cpdn. Of course, we really and truly need this network going. And for St. Lucia, of course, we at this point, it's really needed. Thanks to Dr. Hodges. Dr. Hodges, I know we see each other very, very often. It feels like you're within the Caribbean now. We need to get your passport. Good morning to you. I really and truly appreciate what is going on with the Cpdn. As you are aware that last week, St. Lucia would have had the opening ceremony for the National Agricultural Diagnostic Facility. This is a very, very critical point for us. At this facility, we have several labs under the plant health unit. So we'd have the entomology lab, the pathology lab, the nematology lab, microbiology lab, and also we do soil science or the soils lab. So at this juncture, we have begun doing quite a bit of training, and thanks also to the USDA and of course support from the GCSI, we've been receiving quite a bit of training to assist our staff on the ground to conduct and of course to be able to collect samples, which we can now upload to the Cpdn when there is need for doing some additional diagnostic work. But we're hoping that we will be able to have some very all-rounded diagnosticians or on the ground to do this work. But I have one, just before I go further though, Deanne, there's one thing that keeps coming to me in terms of the avoiding duplication of sample submission. Sometimes you may take, for example, there is a recent incursion of a particular pest. Let me just use the Asian citrus psyllid. And you have several users who want to submit this sample, and you just find this sample coming in repeatedly. What is in place to ensure that this is not, this does not happen? Because you do not want to have this constant uploading of the same specimen or same insect or pest for identification. That's one. And also, I have kind of looked at the system, and you have several users submitting samples. However, they don't have to go through the focal point. I have a kind of a challenge with this because it's like any user may just pick up and say, you know what, I got this thing, perhaps I picked it up on a consignment and I really need to know it, and they send it off without perhaps the focal point not aware of it, not being aware of it. And it kind of puts you kind of off because you do not have full control of what is submitted. I know you mentioned that you can take care of it under your country's end to ensure that, it's well coordinated. But I was thinking, is there a way that there can be a hub, like samples must go through the focal point before it comes out on the platform of the of Cpdn? These are my concerns. I don't know if you want to answer before I proceed.
Yes. Well, the thing is, it's a work in progress. And like I said, a lot of the suggestions, again, will be based on your own scenario, how you are set up with your users. So I could speak in the case with Trinidad. So again, you will have to look in terms of, because in the first instance, the focal point, as we have it here, would have actually approved the users. So it means that how you actually have that, you would need to set up a mechanism for your internal coordination to ensure that those samples or that information is sent to you. So like I said, the way how we are set up here in Trinidad, I would encourage all the other countries. This may not work for you. It may not be the best template for you, but you will have to look at your scenario and try to brainstorm and come up with a mechanism you can do that. So in the case with Trinidad, the way how our users, because we would have had discussions on it. So our users are already coordinated as part of a committee. So therefore, and these users comprise of persons, as you would have seen in the list that Renita showed, comprise of the pathologists, entomologists, and staff from plant quarantine. So they're already coordinated by some mechanism. So even if you're not coordinated, you could come up with a mechanism which you're coordinated. For samples that are going to be submitted, the way how we are structured, it means that if there is a suspect sample or whatever, it is very easy for the communication to be sent to the focal point. Okay, if it is a suspected sample or if they submitted something. And then additionally, when you go on the site, even though you have the same interface, the focal point can see what samples are submitted by the users. So in case a rule or that procedure is not being followed, it's not going to be discovered, whatever. The focal point, if you do periodic checks, you could actually see the samples that are being submitted by the users that you have aligned. So again, if you want to put a mechanism in place, meaning that either the users send you an email when they have submitted a sample or something like that, or the specimen, in that way you would avoid duplication, because in our scenario, these persons speak to each other on a regular basis. So it's highly unlikely you're going to have that duplication. However, when you bring on board, because we haven't brought on board yet all our extensionists onto submitting samples, maybe at that point in time, we will have to sit again and look and to ensure that there's no duplication. So we'll have to look, so it will be an ongoing work, an ongoing process in terms of looking to avoid duplication, what you mentioned, and to ensuring that what users are sending, the focal point is aware of it. And again, the results is important. And hence it comes back to the point why it was so important that you don't have ad hoc persons just sending samples to be identified to the Cpdn, to Dr. Hodges, but a more coordinated approach so you can manage it. You have to manage it in country, because when the results come out at the end of the day, you want to be able to manage all of that. So I hope that answers you, dear Hannah. I don't think any of us have all the answers, but as we go along, based on the experiences, we can always share and learn from each other.
Okay, and just finally though, is there an alert email that, okay, if a sample is submitted, that you receive an alert to the focal point, which goes to the focal point to indicate that one sample was submitted? Just because there may be times that you are so busy you do not get the chance to perhaps go to the platform, but at least if an email comes to you, at least, okay, you know that something was uploaded. Perhaps you're aware that it will be uploaded, but at least it prompts you. An email comes in and it prompts you and it tells you that, a sample was uploaded. Is that mechanism in place?
Yes, once a user submits the sample, and it is received, you get a notification. When the diagnosis is done, you get a notification stating that your sample was analyzed and that you should go on the, I can't quote it correctly, but it says basically that you go on the site so that you can see what your results. So you do get a notification from the identifier coming from the.
But that, not to the user, but to the focal point.
No, meaning other than if it was another user from your country.
Yes.
No, it goes directly to the user. So that is why you would have to set up that mechanism with your user having to send forward that to you at this point in time. Yes.
So it would be up to the user to have you notified. So I was wondering, in the absence of the user or not notifying you, is there a mechanism as a focal point that everything which goes up, you are notified? It's not.
No, you have to set that. No, that's what we're saying. You have to set it up. So let's say, for example, in Trinidad, I'm the focal point and there's a user, John Doe. John Doe sends up a sample. If he sends it up this morning at 10, I may not know. If I go on the site, I may see it. But if you have a mechanism where if John Doe is submitting a sample, he just copies, he sends an email. Because remember, when you go on the site, it is not an email where you can copy the focal point. You are actually uploading directly on the site.
Okay, which I think it would have been a very good thing to have the focal point,
copied
automatically. As soon as something goes up, the focal point is notified. I think it's a good.
That's something we could always discuss further with Dr. Hodges. Yes, but in the interim now, I mean, is the trust there now that, and the rules that you will have to develop, the in-house rules for the submission. So hence, again, it actually enforces the point where your users are really the ones who's going to be following the guidelines and following the rules in terms of the use. But it will not hinder the wider use of the Cpdn because you have the mechanism in place for the submission of your samples island-wide or country-wide.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you very much, and thank you. We, of course, looking forward to working quite closely with Dr. Hodges, and of course to be constant users of the Cpdn. So thank you so much. Have a good day.
You're most welcome, Hannah, and congratulations again on to St. Lucia for opening that center, which you call a series of laboratories. There I was trying to check actually entomology, pathology, nematology, biochemistry. So congratulations. I think it's a great step for the region, and I congratulate you for your efforts on it. And thanks again. I'm sure we'll be collaborating. And just to mention, beyond the end of this session, if there's any challenges or any further questions, persons can also refer to the CPHD Secretariat or can reach out to any member to facilitate. All right, so back to you, Saniel. I see your hand is raised.
I'm sorry to be asking this many questions.
Okay. That's what
we do have perhaps over 13 Jamaicans on the training this morning because, as perhaps you would have known, the MPPU and its supporting functions are spread over primarily 3 entities: the Research and Development Division, the Extension, and of course the Plant Quarantine that deals with the phytosanitary aspect. And one of the challenges that Jamaica faces, even though it is actually a plus, is that persons tend to move from operational level into management or change new assignment or just attrition. And so one of the things I wanted to know is whether or not there is a mechanism in place for when you have to perhaps replace, and understanding that most time the submission of sample perhaps will be coming from the level of the operational staff. And therefore, if they have moved into management and now have a replacement, you may want to replace those users. Would that be facilitated if needs be?
I could give a first go and then Dr. Hodges could add. I don't see that being an issue because a country could always deregister a user and do a submission for a new user by a registration form.
Yes, Deanne, if I could just comment to that. If you do wish to deregister someone, If you could just email me their information, I can delete them from the system.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anil. Hope that clarifies. Are there any other questions, comments from any of the participants?
Diana, I have one more question. I'm really sorry.
No, that's great. Yes.
I know for the period that the CPDN would have had its challenges, Jamaica, through our research and development division, would have been utilizing CABI to assist with identification. I also note as well that on the CPDN interface, the website, that CABI is also a partner. And I really just wanted to know the relationship. Is it that persons who are continuing to use CABI perhaps could now use CPDN because CABI is there? I'm just trying to perhaps have a better understanding of that relationship between CPDN and CABI.
Okay, well, I'll give a first go, and then I'll probably invite both, Renita to comment and any other person. CABI as a member country, for example, Trinidad would be a member country. So as a member country, you would have certain benefits, and it does not take away from the CPDN, which is parallel too. So as a country, you would have the benefits with the number of samples, free samples for identification, some of these being live samples which could be submitted. So it is separate and apart. While it is a member and it supports the CABI in terms of the diagnostics, as far as I am aware, as a member country, like I said, we benefit from, I can't remember if it is 10 or 20 or the number now, samples for diagnosis. And that can be utilized, which is independent of submitting these samples here for digital photography to the CPDN. I will take this opportunity to also mention that as part of the work program for the CPDN, we are also developing and have developed a list of laboratories, a list of agencies that can diagnose and provide diagnostic services, and those that are actually certified for particular tests, and indicating actually where there's confidential in terms of the results, and also if there's a cost attached. CABI is one of those agencies that is on that listing. So you would have the agency, the test it has the capacity to do, the approximate cost, the details in terms of if you're submitting a sample, how you package and all of that. So that's something that would be part, again, in future sessions with the CPDN that we'll be dealing with. So that's my comment here on the CABI.
Hi, Deanne. Thank you. Just to add to that, Sunil, as I was mentioning a little earlier, there's been a long history of CPDN dating way back. And from my understanding, way back under the SISIP program, etc., both CABI and even CARDI was involved, and they are partner members. And as Deanne was explaining, many CABI countries, and I'm not seeing Bob listed here. Bob was attending actually. Bob, sorry, Nitram Ramnanan. He attended the first session, but he isn't here now. Most CABI member countries have access to a number of free identifications under CABI, and those are usually confirmatory identifications, versus the CPDN is a little different. We give preliminary diagnostics to aid in risk mitigation in a short time frame. So it's just a little subtle difference. One is confirmatory testing and the other is preliminary, to help you make a decision quicker.
Thanks, Renita and Dion. That really provided some clarity. Really appreciate it.
Deanne, can I suggest that we take other questions a little later down and move on to the other agenda items? Just suggestion.
Yes. Thanks again for all the questions. Like I said, you can follow up if there are other questions that are unanswered. And I assure you, as you go through, you will always have questions. So feel free to reach out to us We will try to facilitate as best as possible. We may not have all the answers, but among us, we'll be able to at least come up with some kind of result. So I'll move on to the other session, which is the live use, a demonstration on how to submit a sample, which will just give you an insight, and especially for those who have just received their username and password. Again, I would encourage persons to go on the site and explore. Once you log on, explore, and it's a learning by doing, really. The more you use it, the more you become familiar with it. And maybe when we have another session, you'll be able to come up with suggestions how we can improve, what interface needs to be changed, or what are the challenges you may have with it. So I will share my screen and move on to this next session. All right, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. Like I'm seeing a message coming up here. My internet is unstable. Like I said, we're having some problems within the last couple of weeks. So you sign on. Now, if you look here, you would see sign in and sign out. So what we would have asked persons to do is that once your focal point have submitted your names to the CPHD Secretariat, it has been sent to the University of Florida, you go and you actually click on this, which is sign up, and you sign up. Okay? So I would have done that, and this is where I sign in. So this is your page that you would get here. And it basically, if you look on the left, you see home, my Cpdn, sign out, resources, DDIS media library, help, Cpdn, how to, frequently asked questions, a disclaimer, feedback, and contact us. So my samples. Now I'm going to go here on my samples just so you can see what will be seen. For those who would have asked, for example, the questions that Sanil and I think Hannah would have been asking, you can see the Cpdn ID. You will see some icons here, and I'll go through that after. The tentative ID, or the sample that was submitted actually. Your insect type, your submission date. And now, if you look to the top here, you would see the code. If it is a new sample that's submitted, the red arrow, if it's inspected, the green arrow, a tentative ID, a positive ID, and if it's a private sample, an overdue sample. So this is where you can actually, if you go on the site, you can actually see if the sample was already ID'd, or if it was inspected, or if it is pending, okay, or if a new sample has been submitted. Now, quickly, if we want to submit a sample, you click Submit Sample, and let's say it's an insect. You basically click insect on a plant, next. You fill out your information, check here, and don't customer information if you are the customer of this sample. So basically the user is going to be the customer of the sample. And let's say a short name for this sample. So I'm just putting hot pepper, your sample source, where did you get your sample from? And let's say it's from a farmer. And this is where I had mentioned before, choose a security option. So you can either choose private or public. If I choose private, it means that I'm the only person who can view the sample. If I choose public, the other users can actually see the sample I've submitted and the photos, etc. So I'm just selecting private. Sample was collected, and you put the date. It's not a physical sample. A physical sample was not set. And then you go down to the host plant and the variety. So you can fill in all the information. Where was the pest found? So you can say, and you can click the various options. If it's on the growing tips, it was on the leaves, it was on the petioles, it was on the branches, the stem, the trunk. Okay, what was the symptoms? Was there any damage, slow decline, stunting, feeding, dieback, malformation, tip burn, discoloration, leaf mines? chewing damage, stunting. You then fill prevalence. Is it the entire plant, a localized area, scattered plants, field or block? Entire plant. What was the infestation level? Let's just say medium. The number of insects, let's say 4 to 25. Pest timing, unknown. Any additional description to the sample that you want to place here. So, for example, if you want to, for example, to place any additional description of the sample, let's just say dieback and sudden wilting. And then you choose the lab or the specialist. So as mentioned, we have plant weed ID, insect arthropod ID, plant disease clinic. So let's just select and you add it to your list. So you would see email to, so this sample is going directly to this particular identifier. If you want, it's optional. If you want to put a particular message on here, you can do that. And then you click next. And this is where now you will upload your photo. It tells you to upload your photo. So let's see if we can, okay, so it's telling me my internet connection is unstable, but let's see if we can still try. So I go on browse. And I upload my image. Okay. And it tells you the maximum file size should not exceed 12 megabytes that they were reviewing actually in terms of some of the features of the site. Okay. So you would see the sample is experiencing an upload error. So never mind, basically, it's probably because like I said, my internet here is slow, but let's see if we can view the sample I would have uploaded. And this is this is basically what I would have uploaded. It still went through. It captures me as a user. Okay, I see I need to make a change there. And it also has the photo that I would have tried to upload. All right. So basically, this is the information that goes into who it is submitted by, who it is submitted to, my contact information, the grower information, your insect plant, basically what you have placed in there in terms of the field, and in my additional description together with the media. And basically, this is what happens. If you look on the right-hand side here, I would have, when this particular private sample, if you want to change the sample back to public, you can do that. And I'm seeing here, email the sample to a colleague. Could be employed, could probably be used where you can maybe email it to the focal point. So that's basically it in a nutshell in terms of how you upload your sample. What happens beyond this is that you get a notification which says your sample have been submitted. And then when the identifier looks at the sample and the results have been posted on the site, you also get a notification saying that your sample has been submitted successfully. All right. So that in a nutshell is basically how you upload. Is as very easy as that. And so here, okay, so I would have to change the country, but you would see these are the recent samples that were submitted. So if you look here, you can actually see the samples. If I go lower down, you would see basically all of this would have been when we were doing the beta testing. But you can see within the recent time here, we would have had some submission from countries. And you would see Jamaica here is listed. Okay, and the sample would have been inspected. Okay, and this is the recent sample that I would have submitted here. Hot pepper Grenada. Okay. So this is basically what it looks like. No.
Oh, my apologies. Dan, I noted that when you added the person to whom you want to send the sample, whether it's the entomologist or the insect specialist or plant disease or weed specialist, that there was a section that says CC.
Yes.
Is that somewhere that we
Yes.
could, because I'm thinking that for an internal mechanism, we could indicate to our users that the focal point persons must be added right there, irrespective of private or public, as a part of our internal protocols. I really wanted to know if that section is now functional.
That I think Dr. Hodges will have to respond on that. And if not, we'll have to look at it. And I'm thinking, would it be wise to add the focal points? Because we don't want to have a situation where other than the identifiers, when a sample is submitted, a focal point is from another country is copied. Or would it be best for the user to actually just CC and put in the focal point in there? That's something I think we can discuss further, Dr. Hodges.
Yes, we certainly can discuss that. And we had not discussed that really at all in relation to the site and before today. And so I think it would be important that it would be the focal point, obviously, from the country of origin for the sample, as you indicated. Yes, maybe we need to test to see what would be the best mechanism. Initially, everyone will need to internally communicate and ensure that the persons using the site internally communicate back to their focal point.
Yes, agreed. Good suggestion, dear Suniel. That is something that we will look into and see how best it can be utilized. Kelly, St. Kitts and Nevis.
Hi, good morning, Diane and colleagues. I just had a query. When you were clicking on the submit a sample and we were looking at the different options, one of them was pest timing. What is exactly meant by that, please?
Yes, let me go back to the site for a moment. Well, if I can, I'll just go ahead and share my screen so we can look at it at the same time. So one thing to note, let's see, pest timing. So you have choices. Essentially, how long have you observed the pest? And if you're not sure, you can always just leave it as unknown, but perhaps you've seen the pest for a longer period of time. The pest timing is a category that originally was included in our digital diagnosis for particularly extension samples. This becomes really critical when we're thinking about management recommendations. I realize for regulatory situations, it may not be as relevant of a category, but you can see that it's only necessary that you fill in categories that have an asterisk. So pest timing is actually not a required field.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dr. Hodges. Janelle, does that answer the question there?
Yes, thank you. It provided clarity. Thanks much.
Okay, great. Any other questions, Janelle?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Kenrick from Belize?
Yes, thanks, Dan. I wanted to know, in terms of submitting the pictures of the samples, is it easy, how easy it is to submit different pictures? For example, insects, sometimes you need dorsal, ventral views. You might need to send several pictures at one time. And for diseases, the same, because you might take pictures at different zoom at different zooms or different distances, no? So which would facilitate the diagnostics. So do people find that easy, or I just wanted to know?
Yeah, well, I can share the experience with us here. basically the samples that we would have submitted, and based on the training, the sessions that LiveBus would have presented to us, and based on the other experience, they do take those various views in terms of the digital submission. And in terms of the upload, when you look at the site, you would see, for example, you would have browse and you would have sample 1, 2, 3. So you can, if for example, you have more than 5, you could always add to the listing, and you can add those extra photos, because we have uploaded for one sample as many as 6 or 7 samples, different views that was taken. One of the key things is really, it's not a matter of just taking a photo as is, but you have to have, when you take the photo, you have to have basically what is required for the identifier. And when we look at LiveBus presentation, you would see, he would have given tips in terms of what angle you're going to take it, what time of the day, what background you use, all of that, and that helps the identification. But with the ease of which these samples, these photos are uploaded, our experience during the beta testing and beyond that has been a very easy one. It's just like if you were uploading a photo on an email.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone want to add to that, Dr. Hodges?
I think that's very well stated. Thank you, Deanne. And Trinidad has obviously done so much good work in terms of submitting samples and really has done an excellent job beta testing the site, so it should be ready to use.
Okay, thank you. Patrice?
Good morning, everyone. 2 quick questions.
Good morning.
I'd like to know if graphs can be generated from the information collated by the system. And second, I want to know if there will be a collection of the samples submitted throughout the entire system by various countries, so that information can be shared, even if we're not knowing which country submit these samples, but probably the diagnosis and the symptoms, so that we can actually use that as a archive collection.
Okay, if I got you correctly, your first question was if graphs can be generated?
Yes, from the information inputted into the
system. In terms of the amount of submission, I think that is what was discussed in terms of exploring the possibility of how reports. At this point in time, to the best of my knowledge, no. We can't collate that data unless a country wants to go in and actually record the number of samples that you would have submitted and map actually what the use of this site is important in terms of it must be utilized, and therefore some monitoring and evaluation will be carried out, and frequency of use by the countries will therefore be explored. So that's something to be used. Patrice, you also mentioned in terms of the information, with regards to the information that's submitted by a country, I know at this point in time, countries, it's like a library or a database for the submissions. So basically, if, for example, if you go in like a particular country, be it Jamaica or whatever, you can go in there and be actually able to see your previous submissions, and it's like a library. What was the sample submitted? What was the ID? And what was recommendations, if any? As if the information collectively is going to be shared, that we have not discussed, and is something that maybe the team could probably have some discussions and see where that is headed. Dr. Hodges and Renita, if you want to comment on that.
Well, first, I think, Deanne, as you mentioned, we need to focus on use first. Down the road, if the system is very well used, I'm sure we can add some reporting features, but we do not have the reporting features at this time. Looks like there's some hands raised and also a question in the chat, Deanne.
Yes. Well, one of the things is that, Renita, if you could help me if there are any unanswered questions in the chat. But just to let you know that the system is available, the network is available for use by the countries at no particular cost. It's open, it's free, and therefore countries should be encouraged to use it. It's an opportunity for us in the region to be able to utilize this site and to be able to get some kind of support with regards to our diagnostics. With that being said, let me see if there's are there any other questions? Okay, I saw the information was placed on the.
Yes, on the chat. You addressed the question on the chat, and the only other question now will be by Janelle Gore Francis. Antigua, she has her hand up.
Yes, hi Janelle.
Hi, yes, just a quick question. We've spoken about some pictures, photos being submitted, and the size of the file, the maximum size. Just in case when you get information, it's a short video of the whatever it is, and it's within the that size. Is that possible to upload something like that, or it has to be just a still photo?
I think from the best of my knowledge, they have the format, which could be JPEG. I'm not too sure. We'll have to check if a video could be uploaded. But from what I gather, I think it is just a photo. We can check and we could always get back to that. Dr. Hodges?
Deanne, I believe you're correct. At this time, it's a photograph. Again, that doesn't mean that in the future we couldn't look at video uploads, but when the site was first developed, no one was taking videos anyway, for the most part. Videos are a little bit more common now, but at this time, it's a photo.
Yes. So it's a photo. All right. Any last burning question as we try to bring the session to a close? No? Okay. So
should we address the comments? I think that there was a comment specifically to the problems that occurred in 2008. I think that was partly due to some users maybe not knowing that they were included as a specialist on the site. That's why we reduced the number of labs to 3 reliable University of Florida labs that can provide quality response. We also, in the beta testing, addressed some technical issues.
yes, certainly, Dr. Hodges, basically, with the amount of persons who were registered as specialists, samples were being sent to this wide range of persons. And like you said, some of these persons did not realize that samples were being sent for ID. So hence, all of that was taken. And Renita mentioned it, that a number of meetings were held under this technical working group to identify what were the challenges and to actually seek to come up with solutions to mitigate these challenges and these problems. And one of the suggestions, therefore, as it is now, to have persons identified as identifiers, meaning that they will know that they are to receive these samples, provide a diagnosis, and send it back to the user. So the targeted response to your submission. And that was done. The question that was asked with regards to what happens at the end of the 2-year free period, of course, within the CPDHD and the Cpdn, again, similar negotiations will take place to actually allow or to request to see if the same system could be repeated and maybe the signing of another MOU. But until such time, we'll have to wait and see what happens. However, in the interim, to go in that direction, as a region, we will actually have to utilize, as best as possible. So it will be worth having putting in the effort that the University of Florida is putting in to facilitate these submissions within the region. Okay. And in accordance with the agenda, any other items that persons are having with regards to accessing under our troubleshooting. I know we have been troubleshooting from the very first participatory session, but if there's any question or anything that comes under the troubleshooting area. Okay, I was just saying, unfortunately, Dr. Zen, who started on the program, would not have been able to join with us today, but Dr. Dr. Hodges very easily provided and troubleshooted those areas that would have been raised. All right. So having gone through that, I'd just like to bring this session to a close and ask Dr. Hodges and Renita if there's anything else they'd like to mention before we bring it to a close and before I just highlight some of the important reminders.
All good on my end, Deanne. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Hodges?
Thank you, Deanne. Just quickly, the videos from last week will be available soon, so they will be provided to the CPHD for posting on the website that Sally Ann provided earlier when those are available, but they're close to ready. We were just cleaning up the videos so that the noise and those type of issues will remove from the videos.
Okay, thank you. All right, so just some of the reminders again. Sign up. The focal points, your users, work out your mechanisms, determine if you need to do awareness sessions or in-house sessions. Come up with all of these ideas, brainstorm, share it with us, share it with the Cpdn, the technical working group. So, and again, together as a team, USDA, APHIS, University of Florida, we will try to see how best is work in progress, how we can improve the system, is a milestone achievement for the region. So we encourage all persons to do that. Please ensure that your registration forms have been submitted. So I want to acknowledge, mere words really cannot express, and acknowledge and say thanks to Mr. Brian Critchlow, the chair of the CPHD, Ms. Renita Susteran, and her team from the USDA IS office, Trinidad, the management of staff from my own ministry for allowing me time to participate in this and to be part of this group, to all the team members of the technical working group, Cpdn and CPHD, to Dr. Amanda Hodges and others of the University of Florida team, a special thank you for taking the time and effort. You know, when you have these sessions, it is not just a session, you would have had a numerous number of meetings before. So thanks to all the member states, to all the participants who were here on the previous sessions. We encourage you to continue using the site. And we, as the chair of the technical working group, at the moment, I'm sure we will have other sessions that we would engage you in moving forward in 2021. And to all our stakeholders who I may have missed, to all our partner agencies, to FAO, to ICA, I mentioned USD, APHIS, the other organizations and other partners. I want to wish you all the best from the technical working group, Cpdn, CPHD, on behalf of the entire team. Holiday greetings, be safe. Thank you. Think safe, work safe, be safe. It was my pleasure to walk you through this program today. Thanks again.